So, everybody, fix your hair, fix your makeup.
This is as good as it
As
gets.
good as it gets.
Yeah. Jinx.
God.
That was good as it gets. Yeah.
Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show.
3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Work in Progress. John Lane and Will Barfield.
Yes.
We're here with a special guest, as always. Will, what do you notice about me today? Don't say I'm wearing the same shirt. It would be correct, but don't say it.
You wearing your glasses?
Also, don't say it, but it's correct.
You are
Sitting down.
Yeah. Oh, does that mean you're in a new different location?
Yes. I'm sitting down and I don't like it.
Okay.
I usually stand at my standing desk because
You're
A,
very
I
happy
like it
at that.
better, and B, I'm better than everybody else because they don't have a standing desk.
You know what I got in the corner over here that I haven't put on my desk yet is one of those little doodads that you can raise.
That's a
and
nice
lower it.
doodad.
So,
Mine is a real Amazon special with a button that goes up and down, but I'm between office spaces and I'm working from home today at the kitchen counter. And
oh, you're at home at the kitchen. That's cool.
I am. And I don't like it. I like home. I like kitchen
Yeah.
counter, but I don't like this. So nothing to say? Nothing to add? Do you care?
I do care, and I care that you're unsettled.
You
know,
can see that.
You're very close. If you're there in the kitchen, you're very close to that white wine. Are you staying away from that?
I
Until
have
5
to.
o'clock?
I have to drive this afternoon down to Charlotte, and so
Okay.
no box wine for me today. And then
so good.
Yeah, and then I'll also. This is my last bit. I'll talk about. Well, I'll have you talk about what did we do this morning?
Oh yeah. So we this morning, which will not be applicable to when the show is released time wise, but we did
We don't have a time machine.
Yes.
Because it
So
was in
hop
the
on your
past,
DeLorean.
we're in the future. Yeah.
We did a presentation for Raleigh Metro SHRM. Very kind. Olivia Ecker invited us to do that. We worked with Amanda Brennan and Josh Jones and others today and did 2 hours on the utilization of assessments in recruiting, and we're able to help several HR professionals that attended with getting 2 hours of continuing education credit for listening to us. John put together a beautiful slide deck, and we did a really solid job of walking through it. Hung a little bit too much on the front end and had to rush a little bit on the back end, but for never going through it before.
Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Good interactive crowd too.
Yeah. I'm John Lane.
I am Will Barfield.
And we are a work in progress. As always, we have a special guest. Will, most of our guests seem to be in the Raleigh area. I think it's just because there's something in the water here. But let's welcome Jennifer Edwards. Hi, Jen.
Hello. Yes, I'm Jen Edwards. I am the HR director at Cordance. I'm sure you have lots of HR folks that join you on this podcast. So I'll try to keep it fun and interesting from the HR side.
Thanh you.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Not as many HR guests as you would think.
Really?
Quite honestly. Yeah, I think who was our most recent one? Would it have been Amit or Olivia?
Oh, it was Sarah McVeigh.
Yeah. Well, we haven't released that one yet. So
that's why.
She was interesting because Jennifer, she ended up she was a builder. Wasn't she a builder?
Yeah, builder.
Yeah, very
crazy.
opposite profile for a typical HR position. You and Amit Neve both landed in the expert quadrant, which we'll get to in a minute. And I think Olivia was was she architect
or left,
yeah, like me, architect like me.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Well,
it takes all kinds, right? So,
if I understand correctly, you're someone's favorite Edwards. Is that true?
I I don't know. Well,
Yeah, so that's a shout out to Derek. I hope he's watching this. As your spouse, he certainly should support
Presumably.
you. But yes, I
yes,
think Derek's
he
aware that
will.
you are my favorite Edwards. You're actually the one that introduced me to Derek
Uh-huh.
many years ago when we were working together when you were at Kimley Horn, and you're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you should probably know
He
this
is.
guy," because I think he had just made the move to net assertive from Vocus.
Yes, yes, that's what it was. I
Yep.
know. It's a small world around here, it really
And he
is.
was driving
But
that orange thing. What was that car that he was
he
driving? That
was some orange Mazda or something. Yeah,
Yeah, when we
I
met
made
in
him
the
get rid of that
Waffle
thing.
House off of Hillsborough Street.
We keep it
Uh,
classy around here, right?
Keep it classy.
Yeah,
Smothered
Keep it classy,
covered.
that's
Raleigh.
right.
All right, let's jump in. So, as we do every week, we talk about leadership traits under stress, and people will literally come up to me on the street. Will, this is mostly true, and
Yeah.
they'll say, "Where do you get the superpowers and kryptonite from?" And I say, "That is a great question. We get our superpowers and kryptonite from the OAD assessment,
Yes,
as you can see over here." Will, would you like to describe what is using the OAD assessment is like?
it is so simple and easy to administer. It's fast. The results are incredibly accurate, particularly given the measure of speed that you with which you can complete the assessment. And yeah, it's one of the reasons that we selected the tool because of that really nice balance between um, delivery speed and efficiency and also accuracy of results and readout.
Wow, and you did that extemporaneously. That was awesome.
Mm. And I used several different vocabulary words that were multisyllabic.
I'll text you what you did my joke. Good enough. Okay. Well, we do that. Jen took the assessment and let's see where she landed. So as always, we jump in with look at these yoga arms, brother.
Those are impressive.
It's getting there. I mean,
Is
they're
that from your?
skinny.
Wow,
They're
Is
like
that a
little
downward
chicken
dog
wings.
arm?
Look at that definition. That's kind of insane.
That's the only pose I know. Downward dog.
Nice.
that's the main one. So you're good.
You're
Okay.
You're
good.
halfway there.
You're halfway. You're
I
halfway.
asked my wife if there's also an upward cat, and then she just rolls her eyes at me.
She probably should do that more often. Okay. So in our OAD leadership style matrix, there's 4 quadrants. It's a classic 2x2. There's 13 typical traits that are spread across the quadrants. The way we read it is we look at generalists and specialists. Then we look at socially oriented versus technically oriented. Technically oriented. I am a socially oriented generalist in the builder quadrant, and I'm a negotiator. Will is a
Technically oriented generalist in the architect quadrant, and I am a developer.
and Jen, one of our few experts, is
That's very
a
excited.
technically oriented specialist in the expert quadrant. And I actually forget which
She's a processor.
processor. Yes, you remembered,
It's because I paid attention today.
and I didn't.
And notice I put
I'm impressed.
today.
Today, yeah. So it's nice to have an expert here. We haven't had that many. So I think in reverse order, we've had only 1 or 2 facilitators. We've had a few experts, a handful of architects, and the builder quadrant is bursting at the seam. I think those are the kind of people we know. Will. Okay.
Yes.
I was
Will.
going to ask if that was it or if there was just less experts in the world.
Yeah. I
Just
have to
that less
ask
in
that
your
to
world.
clients, guys. I'll follow up on that. No, I won't. Will, do your thing.
Yes. Oh, so
Mm,
Jen, you're no stranger to assessments.
no.
Oh, I'm an assessment nerd. I love this
Yeah.
stuff.
Good.
So talk to us about how this went for you, this assessment in particular, and how it felt to be compressed into a 2-dimensional table. Your take on the accuracy here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in taking it because again, I'm an assessment nerd and I've spent
Mm.
years doing all sorts of different assessments. um, I had no faith taking it. This thing was going to be accurate because it took 5 minutes. You answered kind of 2 sets of questions, and then of course the answers come up, and it's just like, it
Devastating.
nailed you. So how can this thing nail you so quickly? but again, right on. So between, lower in assertiveness and extroversion, 100%, high, a little higher in patience, fairly detailed. I mean, nothing I can add to it that would peg me any better.
Yeah, well, show's over. Thanks, everyone.
That's it.
Good night.
Bye. See you next week. No, great. So thank you for giving us that breakdown. Let us go through the usual breakdown. So we will just use our magic wand here.
Handy dandy.
And our longtime listeners know we measure on assertiveness, extroversion, patience, and detail orientation, and that these traits are relative, which means their numerical score is not as important at all compared to where they land versus each other. So we look at A and D first. D is greater than A, which makes you a specialist. So we would use words like structured and compliant and hands-on, words like that. And then we'll then look at E versus D, and then that it's also the D is greater, which is why you're a technically oriented specialist. And when you see that combination, you use words like straightforward, analytical, direct, technically oriented type of communication style. You put that together, and then we'll also look at your P, and P is one of my favorites. It doesn't drop into one of the quadrants, but we look at P relative to A, and then we look at the distance between them. So when the P is to the right of the A, that is somebody who is very patient, very systematic. We call them a single threader, that they will try anyway to do one thing and then the next rather than many things at once. I happen to be a plate spinner, so I'll have a lot of things going, and I'll drop a bunch of plates too, but I like to keep myself busy and doing many things. You're the opposite of that. It also can mean, and you can talk about this if you want, how comfortable are you with change? Some folks, especially on the expert side, they may be resistant to change, not so much because they're dug in or we always do it that way. It's that they want change explained to them. And when they understand it, they're much more willing to make the required changes than they would be if it's just random and dropped in their in their cubicle or office every day. So that's you.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that's spot on. The interesting thing about assessments, right, is like this is your kind of foundational personality. So, right, you're stressed, you go back to these traits. It's interesting, the plate spinning, right? Because in the job that I have now, it's nothing but plate spinning. I
Right.
can't, there's no sort of single task orientation. And so is that my natural style? No. Have I learned to adapt and do it? Again, we'll talk about kind of some ways to, like, I say overcome these things, but just kind of, again, build systems and such around it. But again, it's interesting to hear kind of natural style. That's 100%
Natural
right
style.
on.
That's a great way to say that. Will, we should use that.
I have
Okay,
a question.
so go.
Ooh, hand up.
Variation. Are you going to point out the variation?
Oh, I wasn't, but I can. So you want me to do the
Well,
three?
it says discuss. I didn't know
Oh,
if that was
variation. Oh, yes. See, I'm not paying attention. I'm also trying to get through this because I'm impatient. Good.
Are you looking at LinkedIn and trying to fix a pen too?
No,
We've been
I'm
through
not.
this.
Neither one of them, although I have been accused of doing that before. Okay, let's talk about, as Will mentioned, our friend here. It says, what does it say? Traits, variation of a processor. So variation, I'm just going to say in this simple terms, is that a processor's P is not usually so far out to the right of the D. So that's a little bit different. I won't go into too much more on that, except to say when we get to the next slide, when we talk about, and I'll go there now, generic superpowers and kryptonite, not all of these may apply.
Right.
These apply to the standard, everyone's processor. And since you're not everybody's processor, let's be honest, they may not all speak to you. But Will is going to ask you about these nonetheless.
What a beautiful handoff. Thank you, John. So Jennifer, he made a great point there. Anyone who takes this assessment and lands lower left quadrant in the yellow there, expert with the processor classification, is going to get those generic superpowers. So the fact that you were a variation may mean that, not all of these, resonate as spot on regardless. Is there one here that stands out to you as really accurate that either you feel or see with yourself or others bring up to you a lot?
Detail and follow through are probably, that is the one that sticks out for me the most.
Nice.
And again, when I see myself going back to sort of that stress response, like that's where I go. I want to like get in a spreadsheet and, check some things off the list to kind of make me feel like I'm in a good spot.
That's very processor-ish, yeah.
Yeah, processor-ish.
Oh yeah, processor-ish for sure.
So same side, but now we're under stress. We're dealing with pressure. We're either at work or dealing with Derek. Something's causing strain for you.
Very stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. And the kryptonite comes out. Which of these do you feel is most accurate or resonates?
I would say, and a little bit probably based on the role I have now, uncommunicative. So when I look at kind of the superpower of having this detail and follow through, and I'll get like really into projects to make sure that the output of projects are super high quality. But I tend to get so focused on the output of what it is. And it's not natural for me to think about how I'm going to communicate this out to people. So again, in my role, I have to do that. I have to do that really well. And I have to force myself, like I have to know about myself that I'm going to put this thing out and it's going to be awesome, but nobody's going to know it's awesome because I'm not telling them how awesome it is and why. And so I have to, again, think earlier in the process of how I roll things out. Example of like different projects, right? That I'm in a role where I have to be building things from scratch in terms of like an HR department. And so even something like a hiring process, how do we communicate with our different stakeholders on approving roles, and then where do they go, and who's involved in all of it? I can come up with this thing that I think is amazing, but it really it doesn't matter, right, if you don't communicate it in the right way.
Before we move on, John, I want to. She brought this up, right? What her natural state is, what she has to do to cope at work. Can we go back to her read out her table and
we can do anything we want? We're a professional podcast.
Tell me what you think, John, when you hear her talk about that, and then you look at that versatility level score.
Well, we didn't really get into versatility level. I will just say that people with this combination of the E, let me get my pointer, being a couple of clicks to the left of the D, or the D being a couple of clicks to the right of the D over here, this relationship here. Those are folks who you could write them a long email with a rationale for a project, and their response will be yes or no, like yes, no. And that is a communication style. That doesn't mean they don't have thoughts and emotion and an inner life going on regarding the subject matter. It just means their communication style is crisp. Maybe instead of writing a PowerPoint deck to prove their point about something, they'll put a spreadsheet table together and send that around. So it's more of a telling style than a selling style.
Yeah.
And so, I'll tie this back to what we talked about this morning, which is we were talking about using our assessment for candidate selection, and that we don't tell our clients to hire or not hire. We point out fits and gaps. So I will just say, for someone doing your job, Jennifer, is that if they're not an expert in some way or technical in some way, they probably can't build the tools and stuff from scratch that you described. The give up with that is, to get somebody who can do that, they're probably going to give up selling communication style, because you can't have all things in all people, right? People
Right.
can't do everything. So I'd rather have someone who builds a great product and maybe isn't so great in the communication, but is self-aware of that. And she might go and talk to somebody in the internal comms team who can help her roll out this great product rather than relying on that for her. So that's how I
Yeah.
would think.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. I'm going to get back to that point when we get to her,
All right, good. Well,
herself.
let's get into the good stuff.
Yeah. So you took the time, Jennifer, when you got the results from this to, communicate with John and make some notes of your own. And I will point out here before we get started on this slide that my dear friend, Mr. Low P, had a typographical boo-boo on here that we'll get into. But you wrote down these superpowers. First line, intending to be 100% introvert.
Introvert. Yes.
And you said no one believes that, but walk us through why
Sure.
you picked these things and let's talk about them a little bit.
Let's talk.
Let's talk.
Yeah. I mean, again, the biggest thing for me in assessments is I feel like some people maybe are afraid, right, to take assessments, or they don't. They shouldn't be self-limiting. So, when look at these as sort of data points about yourself, and when you understand yourself, then that's when you can kind of build these systems and partner with other people to sort of figure out where your gaps are and
Right.
holistically kind of be better. So introverted, yes, 100%. When I look again at my kryptonite and my superpowers, I think like, well, God, how the heck did I get into HR, right? It's like be people oriented and communicative and selling these ideas. And it looks like it would be a terrible job choice for me. But luckily, I've been fairly successful in it. Mostly because, again, I understand myself. I know when I have to get out of my introversion, for example, if I need to get in front of a group. We bring new companies into my company all the time, and so I have to get up in front of them and sell, and that's definitely not my superpower. And so it's a something that I've had to work at, in order to be like passable at it, right? But after that, I'm going home. I'm gonna get some solo time,
Yes, you are.
and be an introvert there. And I think the interesting thing, because I've worked again in HR with a lot of extroverts in the past, and they have, again, a lot of skill sets that I certainly envy when it comes to leading and working with people and that charisma. But there's definitely a need to be liked there. And it probably sounds terrible that I say I don't really care about being liked, but I don't. But it makes it easier, I think, to do some of the hard parts of my job, deliver hard
Yes.
messaging, or those sorts of things, because that's not something that's hanging over my head. On the other side of it too, I am very, very deliberate in who I partner with. So I think of a specific partner that I have at work who is like, you'd talk to him for 2 minutes and you'd realize how extroverted he is. Super enthusiastic, just sell, and he and I make a very good pair, because he wants to sort of talk pie in the sky. Everything is great. We're going to sell all these things. And then I say, okay, let me come in and tell you what it actually takes to do what you're talking about. And we're able together to really come up with some good things. So
That's awesome. And
Wow.
it's good pairing. It's a good pairing.
yeah,
It is. And you're right,
Jennifer.
Jen. I was assembling my thoughts there, Captain Typo. So yeah, you're right. The superpowers and the things that make you excellent at HR are not necessarily those that seem to befit that position when you think about employee relations and being outgoing and being a natural communicator. So you have paired yourself with people and put systems in place to help you with that. Just like John, who has got some issues with detail orientation, put systems in place to help him appear stronger with the
Appear.
details, because he's got a net below him that he's put there himself.
Correct. And let me just correct you, Will. It's major typo, not captain typo.
Not okay. There's another nickname to the list.
To the list.
Kryptonite. So you wrote these down. I love the 7 moves ahead comment, and I've got a question I'm going to pull in a minute. But why don't you
Sure.
talk about these things and why you pick those as the kryptonite when the pressure's on and things are hard?
Yeah, so it's probably pretty common in somebody with my kind of, personality or OAD traits. You want perfection. You want whatever thing you put out to be the perfect thing. And so in some ways that's a good thing, right? So if you're an engineer, I used to work with engineers,
Mm,
you want that thing, you're building a bridge, you want that thing to be perfect because you don't want the bridge to fall down. In
right.
the work that I do, if I put out a process that's not 100% perfect and then we tweak along the way, that's actually probably a better way to get to a good result. But my foundational personality says like it has to be perfect now, and that takes forever, and it's not realistic. And so again, I go back to sort of partnering with people that I work with to
Mm,
say, get the thing. I think one of the things that this person said to me was like, you like drive the car out of the garage, and like if you have to fix it like on the way down the road, like it's fine. So there are times that I need people like that to tell me like, get the thing going, and we like it's fine. No one's gonna die. Like it's okay. We'll get it moving, and we'll work on it. Um, but that one again, that's the one probably that stuck with me the most in terms of kryptonite because I easily fall into that trap and have to be really careful about it.
well, let me add something here. I was just
Please.
drawing out so I have to slip back. So it's really interesting that you said something that Jennifer, is that if you take that super high P that you have and you combine it with a dominant D in a less self-aware person, that combination is called procrastination, and it's a side view of perfectionism where give me one more day to fix it. Where sometimes it's perfecting, sometimes it's procrastinating for fear of putting out something that isn't right. So I suspect earlier in your career, you probably created a lot of late nights that you didn't need to. You probably polished a bunch of things that never got used. And maybe you've learned that.
Yes.
You seem to have learned that now. And you'll release something that's, I don't want to say less than your standard, but meets the bill of goods because it's out today and in use and being used by people rather than perfecting it in your own little laboratory by yourself in the basement.
Yes, 100% spot on. I still fall into that trap sometimes still. So, this is a powerful one that I probably my most powerful one that I have to pull myself out of.
That's awesome.
With your introversion, and with the fact that this current role requires you to be able to flip the extroversion switch, um, you know, although that's unnatural for you, and then to have all these plates spinning, when you'd rather be a single threader, um, you know, was this kind of a builder role something this dynamic? Um, when you look at the career, was this the right thing at the right time to stretch you in maybe in ways you hadn't been stretched before? Are you happy that you took on this challenge, even though when you get home you were probably totally gassed?
Mm.
Yes, 100%. I mean, again, that's why these things are so different because or so interesting because there's different elements, right? Not everything is going to be captured in any sort of assessment that you
Mm.
have. It's all data points. I left jobs before the current one that I'm in because I was bored, because it was more of sort of like a thread a single needle, or I knew what was coming every day, or, I didn't have to get outside my comfort zone. But I do have an element of my personality where I actually sort of like being uncomfortable. And, maybe
Mm.
it goes against some of the things in OAD, but it's been awesome. It's been awesome just having that challenge.
I think it's a bit of ambition, and OAD doesn't look at ambition. So that's what we look
Exactly.
at. And so you probably saw your ambition saw that doing the same thing again and again while comfortable and producing high quality, it wasn't driving your career. So um, that's a trait that OAD is silent on. It's not designed to mention that.
That's right. And caring about learning. I mean, like learning is a big driver for me. And so I think that's the other part, again, which OAD is not something that it's not going to, comment on that
Correct.
specifically in terms of like motivations. So
Wonderful. John,
Yes, sir.
it's time we're going to apply some things. So,
Woohoo.
yes, Jen, as you mentioned, you're an assessment nerd. And I'm sure that these assessment results reminded you of some things that you yourself know. We've talked about your level of self-awareness already. Probably brought up some things that other people have noted, in your career or recently. And maybe there was some new stuff. What can you do now that you've been through this exercise with John in prep for the show, as well as being on the show with us today, to take this information and apply it to yourself as a leader, building and developing and designing this HR organization where you are, and then as you continue to plan and progress your career?
This might sound like a crazy answer, but it's almost like uh, seeing this stuff in black and white. It's like it almost allows me to give myself a break, right? Because you're running so fast, you're doing a whole bunch of things. Some things feel really hard. And when you look at like the black and white data of, again, what's sort of most natural for you,
Yeah.
you can understand, okay, this is why this feels hard. It's not because I'm terrible at it or because, everybody hates me. It's because naturally, like I'm getting out of my comfort zone. This is taking more energy. And so for me, I think that's the biggest takeaway of seeing, again, in those black and white bullets, that there's reasons that maybe things feel harder than other things. And that's okay. Again, we have to give ourselves a break, right? And figure out how to overcome it.
I love that, because things that are hard for me might be easy for you, and things that are hard for you might be easy for me. But if I judge myself against your capabilities, I'm going to come up short on myself and probably beat myself up, and vice versa. So you're right. Seeing it spelled out, knowing that everybody can't be everything, you are who you are, you can do what you can do in a limiting way. So then, yeah, you can then decide, well, this is what I can carry, and I need help carrying something else. Let me find someone like your partner who is very good at carrying what you're not very good at.
Well,
Yeah,
in a role that
exactly.
you're in a role that you're in right now, Jen, um, that workload is not going to give you a break. And those business units that are relying on you, and I'll give you a break. So you have to be able to give yourself a break and stop and forgive. And you've evolved to a point in your career as a professional and a leader where you recognize that, and you do it because you got to charge that battery if you're going to run
That's
as
right.
hard as you have to run in this job, particularly given that it's not a natural state position for you.
Agreed.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you believe it, Jen? We've been trying to get you on the show for
Came to the
months,
end.
and now it's over.
I know. I
It's
was so worried. Well, it's all done.
We had a great time.
That was painless. You guys
That's
made it
us.
painless.
That is us. Well, thank you so much. We had a
always a
great
pleasure.
time with you. Love walking through your assessment, your superpowers and kryptonites. I'm John Lane,
I am Will Barfield,
and we are
a
a work in progress. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Jen.
Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions. Available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.